Now, almost exactly a year ago, right near the beginning of this genocide, I interviewed Ahmed Najar, who is a financial and political analyst as well as a playwright. And he grew up in Jabalia. Now, Jabalia is in northern Gaza. Now, all of Gaza, of course, has suffered hideous apocalyptic horrors on the receiving end of Israel's genocide. Northern Gaza has been and is being at the moment subjected to the most extreme and depraved levels of violence and destruction. We know about the so-called General's Plan, and it's always worth stating over and over again how intent has been more confessed to than almost any crime in history, I would say at this point, where they've openly called for the entire population of northern Gaza, for now, to be violently removed, and for those who remain to be starved or treated as legitimate military targets. Now, we don't know how many people have been killed in Gaza as a whole. We don't know what's going on in northern Gaza. They've slaughtered Palestinian journalists en masse, and they have shut down communications in the north. So we don't even know properly what's happening there. Now, we do know enough, of course, to know there is unspeakable horror. Now, Ahmed's family have been there in Jabalia, and so we can talk about some of these horrible experiences. I mean, it's great to see you again after a year of what must have been just the most unspeakable horror that you've gone through. So firstly, all my solidarity.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. Thank you.
I actually just wanted to start with something which I think isn't even spoken about enough, which is a lot of people don't seem to often realize that the vast majority of people in Gaza are the families of those who were forced to flee in 1948 during the Nakba. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to ask firstly, before we speak about the here and now, about your family's experience there, because that gives, firstly, to take on the attempt to start the clock on the 7th of October, but also just it really compounds the horror of today, that trauma from generation to generation. So I just want to ask a little bit about your family, what happened in 1948.
Well, my family are originally from a small village in what now it's in Israel, and this small village is called Houj. And when the 1948 happened in the Nakba, my dad was he was 1 year old, along with his brother and parents and his grandparents as well. And the rest of the family, obviously, that they were ethnic cleansed from that Houj, their hometown. It's interesting for me because I was actually looking into the history of my family and how they were, their life was before the 1948, and I found a Jewish scholar, a historian, who looked into the roots of my family, and he wrote about them in the Independent. About 10 years ago, he wrote an article about that. They had a really good relationship with the Jewish people at that time, and they felt that they were let down when the 1948 happened and the Nakba happened, and they were kicked out of their home. And that obviously they got kicked out, and then they left to Jabalia, and which is now Jabalia refugees camp. And I even remember the house of my grandparents that was built of iron and ash, and it was in a proper house. And I think from my memories when I was a child, and how my grandfather Hussein was telling me about their hometown and about what they had there, and about how I think now after I grow up and understand what it means for somebody to be traumatized and depressed, and I think my grandfather was very much depressed and traumatized and not wanting to do much, as if he was feeling, it's like what you do is you're doing it for nothing. Nothing is going to last, neither for me or for my kids. And then it just also feels that they really passed this trauma to all of us, but obviously to his kids, my dad, much more than to us, and that's one of the reasons why my dad never left home, and right now he's in Jabalia refugees camp at home by himself, He's nearly 80 years old, and he is by himself. He refused to leave. And if we all of his kids, including myself, have spoken to him, tried to convince him to leave, because we're very worried about him. The area is very dangerous, bombardment all the time. We live, by the way, near Abu Hussein school, and that where a couple of massacres took place on this school. And we just are trying to convince him to leave. And I think having to, spoke to him several times, and the way he kept saying, I look after the house, you go look after your kids, you go look after yourself. And so that's how he was communicating with my siblings. But then he once told me that, I'm nearly 80 years old and I don't want to be displaced again. I've been displaced enough in my life, and I cannot bear the thought of having to be in a tent now and having to think that I might have to start all over again. I've started all over again several times in my life, and I can't do that again. And his dad started actually again after the 48. They migrated, and then the 56 they had to move also places, and then in the 70s as well, my dad had to move from his parents' house and move into somewhere that he had no knowledge of or no money or anything, and had to start from scratch. So I think he's kind of like a traumatized really into the idea of being displaced. And then, when I speak to my siblings and I try to, and now the way they speak about being displaced makes a lot more sense to me now what my grandparents was telling me, and it didn't really make so much sense at that time. And now it does really make a lot of sense to me, and right now I understand it better, the trauma and the life that they had to go through after they've been displaced and lost entirely everything. And it's like right now it feels it's a deja vu. It's the same, because the people have lived with nothing in 1948. The stories we hear that they've just left with their clothes on them and thinking that they will be back in a few days. And now that happened exactly the same with my two sisters who are in the south. They left from Gaza City in the beginning of this genocide to the south, and they left even without their ID. They didn't have time to grab their documents and their everything else. And then they genuinely thought that it wouldn't be longer than a week and they will be back. And now it's been a year. And that is really what scares us, that we've lost what we have worked for so long for, and the people around us, all of our homes and wealth and whatever we have worked for. And now people are queuing for water, for piece of bread, for a humanitarian aid to come in, and Israel is not even allowing that. It's really, to me, is extremely traumatizing in a way. And actually, when my family left Jabalia 3 days ago, they went to Al-Nasser in Gaza. And then what they did, the Israeli army, they had a checkpoint. So they let women go and they keep men. They dig a massive big hole in the school and they put the men in them. They strip them and search them, and they take their facial print or whatever, pictures of them, and they check them, and then some they take and some they let go. And that scene, when my nephew described it to me, it reminds me what my mom told me that happened in 1977. That she told me that the Israeli army has come into Jabalia refugees camp, and called all men in the neighborhood to go into Birket Abu Rashid pond, where they collect the rainwater. And at that time it was summer, it was dry, so they collected all men in that hole and kept circling around them with the jeeps and sometimes with the guns and shooting over their heads. And I'm thinking, this is exactly what happened at that time. It's happening this time again and again and again. And these are the stories that we know, and I'm sure there are hundreds of stories we don't know that exactly a replica of what's going on right now. Yes, of course, right now is a much more intense and in a more of a genocidal conduct, if you like. But it has been, that is what, it's like when I speak to my parents, that is the experience that they have. This is the feeling that they have. This is the fear that they have, and they know. This is quite funny for me that they try to grab as much of their belongings as they can, where my siblings think that they will be back. And it's that sort of, and they had a fight or an argument in the family between my siblings and mom, and they were saying to my mom, hurry up, we don't have time to grab anything, we're leaving, just hurry up. And they were complaining about my mom that she's trying to get as much as she can when she's leaving. And it just made me feel, well, because she knows that she might never be back. And that is the sort of, the trauma we really live at the moment is I don't know how to describe it. There are no words. I really don't have the words to describe the trauma that we collectively going through at the moment.
I mean, early this year, there was a previous onslaught against Jabalia. So I'm just wondering if you could tell me about that and what that meant for your family at the time.
Well, I mean, they obviously, as they are there, and then they were questioning, are they going to, the tanks are going to get closer? Are they going to keep bombarding? Where are they going to allow us to leave? Are they going to allow food to come in? What's going to happen? And obviously the situation is intensifying by day. So they were really scared and confused. And, I'm from here. Sometimes I get hold of them on the phone and I try to kind of advise or say something, but I cannot suggest to them, actually, you have to leave now, or say no, you have to stay, because I don't know what the situation for them there. But every time I spoke to them, the fear is in their voice, the trauma is in their voice, and the confusion of what should they do, especially that they have heard of many families that actually decided to leave, but they've been killed on the way as they are fleeing. And then you think, well, you really don't know what to do. And I was speaking to my sister, and she was like, we don't know. We're gonna stay here until we feel the point where we have no choice but to leave. Then we will leave, but we're not going to just leave when we don't know where we're going, or we don't have any route to follow, or any plan, or anything like that. The process of also fleeing is extremely traumatizing, because you can be killed on the way. That's one. Two, you can be arrested, and once you're arrested, no one knows anything about you. They have arrested my brother-in-law as 3 days ago, as they were my family was leaving, and they haven't let him go yet. We don't know what's going on with him. We don't know how long they're gonna keep him. We absolutely know nothing. And about 8 or 9 months ago, they have arrested his brother, and we, until this point of time, know absolutely nothing about his brother. We only had managed to get one piece of information, that he's still alive, from somebody who was arrested and was released later on. And he said, I have seen him. I have seen him in the jail, and then we think, okay, he's still alive. So it's just the fear, you know, you live in, and then the fact that you know that you might be going through these checkpoints, and they might take you, and then no one knows anything about you, and all the horror stories that come out from the Israeli jails of what they've done to Palestinian prisoners. There are even cases of rape. Imagine having to go through that and knowing that there is a chance, because you're a young man, you're a man of your 20s, or you're a man of your 30s, that your chance is almost like, you know, 50-50, you might be taken away. Imagine having to go through that. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't leave. I would rather wanting to die where I am. That's my position, you know, than having to be taken away by the Israeli soldiers. I you know, I said that to my brothers, but then obviously I said, like, just do whatever you feel the right thing to do. And then when you think about it, like, you know, these are your choices. These are staying at your choices are either stay at your home. You might be starved to death. You might be killed by a rocket landing at your home. No one even comes and picks you up. You might get injured and no one can get to reach you until you die. You bleed to death. Or you might have to go through fleeing through a route that you could be killed, or you could be arrested and tortured, brutally tortured, and possibly raped. These are your choices. You decide, what are you going to do? And these are literally the choices that the people of the North in particular are having at the moment. And I think most people in Gaza, these are their choices.
It's so important for people to know. I mean, for people to, I'm sure people listening, that context, those countless thousands of Palestinians have been incarcerated, including children, and Save the Children have reported the sexual abuse of Palestinian child detainees at the hands of the Israeli state. And we have, as you say, overwhelming evidence of rape, of gang rape, of Palestinian men and women, and the most hideous sadistic torture, which has included many detainees being tortured to death, including at least 2 doctors that I'm aware of. In terms of what's happened since 1st of October in Jabalia, because that's when a total siege was imposed, and already, and we've had a siege of Gaza since this all began. I mean, there was a siege of Gaza before, so we're talking about tightening, of course, of that siege. But, you know, we get, you know, the basic needs of life just prevented from entering deliberately by the Israeli state, and then this full-blown military onslaught. What are the sorts of things that you've heard from your family, if you don't mind me asking, of course, in those last few weeks?
Sure. I think their fear was, of course, that they might be killed. The fear is that, so it's like we spend a lot of the time to try and understand what is the aim of the Israeli army, what they really want, you know, and so it's that thought that we think that once you figure out what they really want, you can navigate around it and avoid to be on the way. Okay, but then when you fail, which we have failed to figure out what they really want, except that they don't want you there, they want you dead. And I think there is I know my family might not be entirely aware of how they maybe, this is what I gathered, I don't really know how they feel, how they subconsciously feel, but I think they subconsciously deny or living in denial of the fact that there is really genuinely someone doesn't want them there or wants them dead, because it's not a humane thing to want. Is not really something that a human being would, a normal human being, let's say, like a normal human being would want, is to want somebody else that has never done anything bad to them, want them dead. So it's like, to them, it's also still kind of, is that a trauma, or is that thought of why they want us dead? So maybe they don't want us here, maybe they want our house, maybe they can allow us to leave, but then is that thought of the fact that no, actually, everywhere you turn it, anywhere you look at it, from any angle you look at it, is that they want you dead. And this is the ultimate, this is the answer to the question. And then, you know, we try to be creative about, no, maybe they want something else. Maybe they want just the north of Gaza. So then the worst could happen to us, that then we are left with nothing. We're left without our houses and our possessions and belongings. But then it comes down to the fact they actually are after you. And then you look at it, is the fact that they've really put Gaza under really brutal, well-controlled siege, and surrounded by tanks and all areas, and bombarding the people and depriving them from food. Yep. Is no answer. No one answer to this, except that they want the people dead. They don't even want to ethnic cleanse Gaza. They want to genocide Gaza, because I really believe if they want to ethnically cleanse Gaza, they probably would have made a way out for the people to leave. But what we are seeing, whether the people of Khan Yunis, people of right now of the Nusayrat in the middle of Gaza, or of Jabalia, they're all trapped in small areas and bombarded and starved. So this is the way. I think in 1948, it was more about ethnic cleansing the Palestinians. So they ethnic cleansed Palestinian towns, and then obviously killed a large number of Palestinians at the time. But I think the aim was to ethnic cleanse the towns. And that's why they made a way for people out, and people fled and ran for their lives. That's the case for my family, for example. But right now, I think what's happening is a genocide. What's happening is they want to kill the people. They're trapping them, starving them, depriving them from medicines, destroying all hospitals, so that they make sure that if you get injured, you don't get treated and you die. And then they're bombarding the people. So that's really the actual situation, what's going on there.
I mean, in fact, I'm just going to read out some quotes from an Israeli general called Giora Ireland, who is a self-described advisor to Yoav Gallant, who's the defense minister of Israel, who has pending a request for an arrest warrant from the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. We're waiting for those to be approved. So almost exactly a year ago, around the time I last interviewed you, he wrote a piece in Fathom Journal, which is the quarterly journal of the British Israel Communications and Research Centre, which is a pro-Israel lobbying organisation. And he said, in support of the siege, that Israel must also prevent others from giving clear assistance to Gaza. The Palestinian people must either temporarily or permanently leave. The people should be told that they have two choices: to stay and to starve, or to leave. And he said if they didn't consent to this mass ethnic cleansing, they will starve, not because of the Israeli bombs, but because there will be no water in Gaza. At the same time, in an Israeli newspaper, he said that preventing fuel from entering Gaza would mean that Palestinian babies would present to the world babies who died in incubators as a result of power outage due to the lack of fuel. But he said this is a necessary condition in an existential war. We are facing a situation of either us or them. 3 weeks later, newborn babies began to die. He said in November 2023, he denounced talk of the poor women of Gaza on the grounds they are all the mothers, sisters, or wives of Hamas murderers. He also urged Israel to embrace the spread of epidemics because it will bring his victory closer and reduce casualties among IDF soldiers. More recently, he cooked up the so-called General's Plan. And that General's Plan is supposed to be applied to northern Gaza, in which Israel orders all civilians to leave and entirely besiege northern Gaza and declares it a closed military zone, and those remaining are legitimate targets. And he said, Ireland, it doesn't mean necessarily we're going to kill every person. It would not be necessary. People will not be able to live there. The water will dry up. Now, Israeli newspapers, and it's interesting actually, even Israeli newspapers talk openly of this being implemented, and the British media
Yeah.
you'd struggle to see actual proper discussion of what's actually happening in northern Gaza, despite the intent. I mean, I just read him out what he said.
Yeah.
It's not subtle. They're not hiding it. These aren't buried in top secret documents that need somehow to be exposed. He's just writing in newspapers and broadcasting. What do you think about that? The fact it's just there in the open, publicly declared, but it's not framed as such by the Western media.
That is what really scares me the most. And I think Israel from day one has been extremely upfront, and they even laid out the plan of what they're going to do in Gaza, and they exactly delivered of what they said at the very beginning. And so, you know, they said that we will starve the people, we will kill the people, we will not allow medicine or food or water or electricity. They said all kind of genocidal rhetoric, and they delivered upon what they actually said. What really scares me is the fact that the world is allowing them to do that. And I have recently listened to an interview with Gober Mete. So he's a Jewish scholar, he's a Holocaust survivor, and he said something really resonated with me and really scared me a lot. He said, you know, the Nazis did not start by burning the Jews alive. They started by mass shooting them, and then because the world allowed them and were complicit with what the Nazis were doing, then they got bolder and more aggressive and more creative in how to kill the Jewish people, and they got to that point of burning people. And then you cannot have a, you know, there are no genocides that starts by their most, you know, what's the word, most
like extreme form. They always, because they always start with words. That's what people say. Genocide start with words, and then they escalate.
And then we got to the point where they actually burned people alive in Gaza, in the hospital. And then yet the world is not really reacting to it and saying, you know, you got to stop. They have said, laid out the plan of what they're going to do, the Israeli politicians, all of them, without any exceptions. And the world did not say anything. They destroyed almost 80% or more of Gaza infrastructure and homes and houses and schools and universities and hospitals, and then no one has said anything. So it really does scare me. And that interview that I watched for Gober, it really kind of, for 2 nights I did not sleep, thinking, you know, he's so right. He's right, because the fact that the world is complicit, the world is not going to stand up to Israel and say, you know, you can't do that. We're not going to allow you to do that.
I mean, on that, in this Guardian article, you referred to Gabriel Mate and what he said there. And then you said, it haunts me because I see history repeating itself. We've already seen Palestinians burned to death. What more has to happen for the world to care? What more does the West need to witness before it stops arming Israel? Nothing seems horrific enough to make the world sort of malice. And I think that, for me, is just such a key point, in that there doesn't seem to be a threshold. I don't know what crime Israel is supposed to commit before both Western politicians and media outlets accept this is one of the most depraved and extreme crimes of our time, because we've seen the mass slaughter of children, we've seen the mass destruction of hospitals, we've seen kids being deliberately shot in the head, as dozens, for example, of US-based medics have said. We've seen, as you say, Palestinians being burned alive. We've seen countless newborn babies butchered. Like, what? I mean, I think that, for me, for you, in that I'm a white guy from Stockport, I feel like I'm going mad. You've got family there. You're Palestinian. And to live in a country where you see Western politicians and media outlets refuse to treat Palestinians as even having a fraction of the worth of, say, an Israeli or another Westerner. I mean, that, for me, I don't, it must just be, I just wonder, it's a difficult, grim question to ask.
It's a very difficult question. And I've you know, I've always felt home in London. And to me, you know, it is home. but to see how the government is supporting a genocide against my people, to see what the government that actually not valuing the lives of people like me, the lives of people who carry the same characters as me, who carry the same skin color as me, who carry the same belief as me. It really is very scary and mildly putting it, that is extremely scary to think that this is the government that I consider to be my own government, and I go and vote.
It is
Yeah,
your government.
exactly. This is the way they think of me and of people like me. And you know, you sometimes kind of wander around in your thoughts thinking, well, what different do I what's the difference between me and my brother? The only difference really that they decided to stay where they were born and I decided to leave. But what would make the British government to think of me more than they think of my brother or of my sister or of my neighbor or of anybody in Gaza? I think is like this is the thing. This is what drives me mad to think about. You know, they really don't think of our life the same way as they think of anybody else's life, if that matter. You know, and then we see Starmer and all the governments here go crazy when Israel is being attacked or when Iran attacks Israel. And I've seen what Starmer, the statements of Starmer he has made after Iran attacked Israel and after Israel attacked Iran, and they're completely different from each other. It's almost declaring war against Iran, almost, and then say and supporting wholeheartedly Israel for attacking Iran. And you think like, what's going on here? What, like, can't you see that Israel is committing a genocide? And that also really, to me, it's driving me. I don't know what the word to say, crazy, or but what the world or the West call terroristic groups are actually the ones who are fighting to stop the genocide in Gaza, whether that was Hezbollah or Houthis in Yemen or the groups in Iraq or anywhere in the region, that they are attacking Israel, and their only condition for stopping their attacks on Israel is to stop the genocide in Gaza. They have made it very clear. But also the West, with the one that they claim democracy and values and human rights and equal human rights, are the ones actually supporting the genocide in Gaza. So I'm like going crazy in my mind thinking these are the terroristic groups that they have always been telling us these are horrible terroristic groups, are actually putting their lives in danger and in the front line to stop the genocide in Gaza, where the West are putting their lives in the front line and in danger to carry on with the genocide. I'm thinking, am I going mad, or what? The world is going mad? What's going on? You know what I mean? Like it gets to you into that way. You think about, you lectured us for years and years about values and human rights and democracy, and we are all equal, and it doesn't matter what color you are or what gender, what religion, and what have you. No, we're all equal. And now you just throw them all in the gutter, basically. None of that exists anymore.
Well, how can anyone take anything the West takes seriously again? Its whole claims of moral authority. I mean, this is the most confessed to crime in history, the most documented crime in history. Not just documented by its victims, but by its perpetrators. I mean, every day IDF soldiers just gleefully post their war crimes. Like, it's nothing subtle, and yet, so that's the. I mean, the West. There's no coming back from that.
I mean, this is what really it gets me, and then I get angry. Of course, I get frustrated, and I get like, as you mentioned, like what else could Israel needs to do for the West to say like, I think, hang on, I think that's a bit too much. You got to stop. Yes, we are friends. Yes, we are allies, but that is not anywhere in line with our values or principles. But maybe it is. To be genocidal, maybe it is with the Western values. It's in line with the Western values, and like, you know, you don't know. You question what's going on. What's in line with your values? What is the thing that you're gonna allow? What's the thing you're not gonna allow, or not even allow? I think it's like, what's the thing you're gonna support or stand by? What are the things you're not? But we openly, many nations in the West are standing by Israel in their genocide in Gaza. And that's the sad, you know, sad, frustrating, whatever ugly word you can think of is what I feel right now, to think about the fact that the West is supporting this.
And just finally, I wanted to ask is, there's still many people who've remained silent, I would say, about what's happened. What would you say to those people at this point? It's a year of this, and given what your family have gone through and so many other Palestinian families have suffered, those Palestinians who survived, given entire Palestinian families have been wiped from the face of the earth, from newborn to grandparents, great-grandparents, what would your message be? Just people who haven't spoken out at this point.
I say you can never stay silent about a genocide. If you stay silent about a genocide, then you have already taken the side of the oppressor. And as Desmond Tutu said, if you sit on the fence when there's an oppressor, then you have taken the side of oppressor. So you cannot be silent. And that is the one thing I want to say to whoever is listening to us right now. The next war is happening in the world is going to be much more uglier, and the next guy, the next genocidal guy or war criminal guy, the next one is going to pick up from where the last guy ended. We see how the attacks are in Lebanon now. We see the first thing Israel attacked were hospitals. We see that they were civilians. We see the whole horrible things that they have done. We never imagined that anyone would dare to do what they are doing right now. But after they pushed the boundaries in Gaza, they dared to do it in Lebanon. And I tell you, the next guy is going to be the attacking hospitals, because hospitals have become their strategic targets in wars.
It's normalized. It's completely normalized. You can just wipe out hospitals, medics, patients, the lot.
Exactly. And that's why we should all, and I mean it, all stand against this kind of behavior, stand against it, because we don't want a life looks like that for our children, for the next generation. We don't want this to be normal.
Beautifully said. Just incredibly moving. Again, all of us who aren't Palestinian who are listening to this, we can obviously feel the pain and the horror, but we can never, ever quite imagine just how difficult this is for you to go through. And it's beyond my imagination how you're able to just speak so brilliantly and eloquently when you're going through this level of trauma. But so important that the rest of us listen to what you said and act on what you said and offer our platforms to make sure your voice and the voices of people like yourself are listened to, because that's who we need to be centering right now. So please do, for those who've watched or listened, do share this, get this video out, leave your comments and press like, because that then increases engagement and then more people watch the video, which is obviously the point. Subscribe as ever. But Ahmed, it's been such a pleasure and an honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you. Thank you for the time.